Hey guys, in this video we're going to be going over the French model of 1950, sometimes called the Mac 50 here in the US, and we're going to get into the history behind this rather obscure pistol. Now, before we get into the 1950, we need to go back into French handgun history a little bit, starting with the 1892 here. Now this was the standard French sidearm going into World War I. France, kind of like with everybody else, they were facing massive arms shortages, especially in pistols. So France orders handguns from just about everywhere they can get them from. Including the United States and Spain, most notably with the Spanish rubies. France bought just a ton of these rubies. There's tons of variants of French used Spanish ruby pistols. This being an actual World War I French used example. Now, coming out of World War I, the French have just a whole mishmash. They have just a really eclectic mix of pistols that they're using after World War I. Of course, France sort of knows this is an issue. They want to standardize, and this sort of culminates through the 1920s into the 1933 pistol trial, where they adopt what we now know of as the 1935A pistol, and most notably to this story, the 1935S pistol. Now, the 1935S pistol was sort of like a stopgap because there weren't enough 1935As available. Now, you can go back and see my video on the 1935 pistols, although I think the 1935A is probably like the better like target sort of pistol. I think the 1935S here might be the better combat pistol, and I think the French agreed with me with this. So I think the S was the better pistol. Now, the French, of course, didn't make enough in the 1935s, really before World War II, before their invasion and surrender to the Germans in World War II. So again, France wasn't really able to standardize on any one design. Now, coming out of World War II, the French handgun arsenal is even more eclectic than it was coming out of World War I. There's just even more guns because now the French have a ton of German designs, captured German weapons, most notably like the P-38 and Lugers and stuff like that they captured and kept making at the Mauser factory that the French occupied after World War II. I mean, you have like Japanese pistols and French inventory, from the Pacific. So the French just have a ton of different pistols, a ton of different designs. The French know this is a problem, and in October of 1946, the French Army General Staff kind of starts this program of standardizing on a new handgun. This new standardization is a little bit different than what we would think of as like a standard sort of military arms trial, or even what the French did back in 1933 with adopting the 1935 pistol. This new program was a little bit more of like a directive to adopt the Saint-Étienne design of an updated 1935S pistol. Now, there's a whole lot of specifications that the French Army listed for their new pistol. Of course, they wanted one at 9mm. The French finally saw the writing on the wall and are going to standardize on a 9mm sidearm. And here's a few other kind of the most notable ones. They wanted the barrel to be between 10 and 12 centimeters. They wanted to have at least a 9-round magazine capacity. They wanted it to be hammer fired. They wanted it to have a manual safety, and they wanted it to have a loaded chamber indicator. Now, this whole standardization program wasn't so much like a pistol trial. They had already unofficially adopted this Saint-Étienne design. They already officially wanted the Saint-Étienne design. So that wasn't going to change. Regardless of that, SACM still put forward a pistol for this sort of testing procedure. Maybe they just had wishful thinking. Maybe they thought it was a trial. But SACM basically just took a 1935A and scaled it up to 9mm, submitted it to the trial, which is really interesting because this sort of French pistol trial board, they actually purchased a commercial SIG SP47/8, which is they just straight up bought it off the commercial market. The SP47/8 is kind of like the precursor to the SIG P210 that we know of today, which is a 1935A derivative in itself. So there's kind of two 1935A derivatives in this test. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly why SACM even decided to submit this. Maybe they thought it was more of a traditional trial than it actually was. But the French trial did buy this SIG pistol commercially, so SIG didn't even know that their pistol was being tested against the other designs. Now, in May of 1950, the French government started testing these 4 pistols that they had procured, which included a 2,500 round endurance test of these 4 pistols. Now, the 2 Saint-Étienne designs that they had already decided unofficially that they wanted actually had parts breakages and couldn't even make it to the 2,500 round count. So Saint-Étienne gave them a 3rd pistol for them to put through these tests, and that 3rd pistol developed the same parts breakages as the first 2, so couldn't even make it through the 2,500 round count. And these are some of the noted sort of problems with this Saint-Étienne design. Poor machining and fitting of the parts, heavy trigger pull outside of the specifications given. All 3 developed cracks in the breech block. The pistol's average malfunction rate was 2.01%. And again, all 3 failed to reach 2,500 rounds. Now, in contrast, the SIG SP47/8 was noted as being accurate and reliable with a malfunction rate of only 0.48%. That met almost all the requirements set forward by the French Pistol Board, and overall was considered to be a suitable military sidearm. Now, despite the findings of this test, on August 16, 1950, the French went ahead and officially adopted the Saint-Étienne design as the
Pistolet automatique de 9 mm Modele 1950.
Now, you would think an official sort of adoption procedure would be like, we tested the pistol, we liked it, we adopted it, therefore now give us those. Not in France. Apparently what that means is, hey, we adopted it, so go back and fix the issues we had with it. And that's what Saint-Étienne did. They went back and they worked really hard in fixing the issues with the pistol. And in March of 1951, they gave 3 new updated examples of this 1950 pistol to this French testing committee. Apparently, all 3 pistols had 8,500 rounds fired out of them without malfunction except for related to ammunition. Now, after Saint-Étienne successfully updates the 1950 pistol in 1951, Châtellerault was actually given the first order to start manufacturing the Saint-Étienne design, and the first batch of the model of 1950 pistols was delivered in June of 1953. So here we go, we've arrived back to the model of 1950 pistol. This is an MAC design, so this is among the ones that was made at Châtellerault. Most notably now, Châtellerault, when they made these in serial blocks of 10,000 with prefixes, with letter prefixes. So all of these, there was no letter prefix block. The first serialization of production was A001. This so happens to be an A5754, which is among the first 10,000 made at Châtellerault. So this happens to be a pretty early example here. So between 1953 and 1960, Châtellerault produced about 210,000 model of 1950 pistols. Now, starting in 1960, production slowed at Châtellerault, and starting in 1961, production picked up at Saint-Étienne. Now, Saint-Étienne produced about 120,000 of the model 1950 pistols. Sort of the main differences between the Saint-Étienne and Châtellerault production is the marking on the side. It's just an S instead of a C, so it's MAS instead of MAC. And then also the serial numbers are different on the Saint-Étienne produced pistols. So Saint-Étienne produced their guns in serial blocks of 100,000, and they started at the serial prefix of FG. Now, the exact number of 1950s made, it kind of varies a bit. You could just sort of add those 2 production numbers together and come up with a total production. But each one of these books, there's not a ton of books on French handguns, but on the 1950s, this is probably the 2 best books out there. And each one of these books gives a different number, and I'm not sure why exactly, but one book gives 330,000. The other book says specifically 341,900 were made total. Total production is somewhere right in there. Now let's get in and do some close-ups. Now here's the 1950, and as a size comparison, here is the 1935 S that it is based on. Overall, the slide length and width is pretty comparable. Obviously, the 1950 is has just a little bit longer of a barrel, a little bit wider of a slide, but that's very, very similar. Most of the size difference is down here in the grip. The grip is much longer on the 1950, of course, but overall that's a size comparison there. Now, just to compare, the 1950 to something else that others might be familiar with. Here's a 1911A1. The 1911A1 is just a little bit bigger than the 1950, so just as a little size comparison there. This is the earlier Châtellerault produced gun, and note it just has a C for Châtellerault, so manufactured Arma Châtellerault. Note the period after each letter, just sort of, letting you know that this is an acronym. And here is the Saint-Étienne one. So manufactured Arma Saint-Étienne. Now, no dots after the letters on the MAS example. And now going back to the serial numbers. On MAC examples, you'll see just a single letter and then 1 to 4 numbers after that, just for the serial number. That was changed up here, so it's kind of easy just at a glance to be able to tell the different manufacturers. So the Saint-Étienne made guns will have either FG or FH here, and then you'll have 1 to 5 serial numbers since it's 100,000 blocks. Now here on top, this is the loaded chamber indicators. I don't know if you could tell at this angle, but this one is nothing in the chamber. There's a snap cap in this one, so it protrudes just a little bit here. From the side, you can kind of tell how much it protrudes. So here at the top is 1935S. This is the 1950 barrel here in the middle, and then this is the 1911A1 barrel at the bottom. It's very obvious the Browning influence on both the 1935s that the 1950 is based on and the 1950 itself. You could see the sort of added lugs to the 1950 barrel, which is probably needed with the increased chamber pressure of 9mm. You could tell the barrels are extremely similar to the 1911 barrels, and the Browning design influence is there with the French 1935 pistols, and especially with the 1950. To me, the 1950 shooting it does feel very much like a 9mm 1911, though there is quite a bit of design differences in the actual pistol. But barrel lockup wise, super similar to 1911. Of course, they just have the single swinging link on all of these here. It's just very, very heavily influenced by the Browning designs. So the manual slide mounted safety on the 1950 was brought over from the 1935S. It's almost exactly the same as on the 1935S. It has the same problem as well. So whenever you go to, say, maybe you're racking the slide, it's very easy when you're racking the slide to flick the safety on. So say if you were trying to chamber around and then fire it, you could it's very easy to inadvertently turn the safety on and then go to fire. And then when this happens, you would just fire and then nothing would happen because this is just a hammer block safety. This to me is kind of the worst manual safety system on any military handgun that I can think of. And it works very simply. Essentially, whenever you rotate the safety on, this block in the back rotates out so that it now protrudes out further than the firing pin. So whenever the hammer drops, it strikes the block instead of the firing pin, just like that. You probably noticed the safety kind of moves a little bit whenever you do that. There's been a couple times whenever doing this that the force of the hammer striking the block will actually flick the safety off. I don't know if that's just something of like a worn gun, but that does happen sometimes. I don't know the safety implications of that. But my personal feelings, and I have no way to prove this, is that the way this safety is supposed to be worked is sort of like a decocker. So say you just fired the gun, there's a round in the chamber, and you want to reholster it safely. You don't want to holster it, of course, in single action like this. You want to decock it. But just by, manually decocking it like this is not the safest thing. So I think the safety was meant to be flicked on. You would then manually decock it, and just in case your hand slipped or something, it does have that hammer block safety. And then you would put the safety off after you manually decocked it. This is my sort of own opinion on what this was used for. I don't really have any proof of that. The 1950 magazine is, of course, quite a bit longer than the 35S magazine. Going from 9mm and having that 9-round capacity just sort of gives it that added length. But these magazines are super similar. Here's a few examples of 1950 magazines. just to kind of tell how they run the gambit here of condition and everything. Obviously, this has probably been a refurbished Parkerized magazine here, and these are kind of more worn examples. These freshly Parkerized ones, they tend to stick in the guns a little bit, or these some of these mags that have been kind of worn smooth, they tend to pop out a little bit easier of the gun. The grips on the 1950s are just kind of this simple polymer. It kind of reminds me of Bakelite a little bit, but I'm not exactly sure of the exact composition of this. These are very slick plastic. It's very smooth and slick. If it wasn't for these sort of molded in serrations, I would say that this is would be kind of horrible grips. These serrations kind of only grip in one direction. So overall, the gun doesn't stick in the hand super well. Like, I could see if your hands were slick trying to operate this, it might feel a little bit slippery. The slide serrations are not very deep or very grippy either. This is pretty slick slide serrations as well. So trying to grip this, like when I unboxed it and this was covered with like grease or cosmoline, it felt very slick, and so I could see maybe in the rain or in mud or blood or whatever, trying to grip this would be pretty hard with the hammer down, trying to overcome that the hammer spring. In this example, this is a much newer example. This is a recent import. The hammer strength on this, it's hard to describe and without feeling it, but it's a much stronger hammer spring on this new one versus this old Vietnam import. The hammer spring on here is a little more worn and less. It gives a little bit easier whenever you are racking the pistol on this older one. But on this new pistol, it's a pretty stiff gun. Your hands kind of tend to slide off of these serrations. They're just not the best serrations. So overall, I mean, the design just kind of does feel like it was designed by a government committee instead of by like a private manufacturer. I mean, these slide serrations, you would look at this and just think this is pretty standard 1911 or whatever slide serrations, but as a contrast to a Browning high power here, these look very similar, but these serrations are much deeper and way more grippy. I can grip this much easier than I could this 1950. So I would say the 1950 it's really close to being a fantastic pistol. It just has a few shortcomings, like just the overall grip, slide serrations. It's a pretty horrible safety on this. It does have some good pros, of course. It's super easy to take down. I did a quick takedown video if you want to see the takedown of this. It's easy to take down, which of course was actually a mandate. It was required, one of the requirements for the pistols to be easy to take down, but it's based on the 1935S, so it was easy to take down kind of from the beginning. So it's a very interesting choice to pick the 1950 when there is the option of the Browning high power. I'm sure the French had many high powers in inventory that were captured from the Germans. So it's not like this pistol was unknown to them. They actually ordered some of these back in the 30s before World War II. So it's just kind of interesting, like, if they wanted at least 9-round capacity, why did they go for a super long single stack instead of just going for something like the Browning high power? I'm guessing this is a reliability thing, being that, double stack magazines maybe aren't super trusted yet. And then another thing to point out is the existence of the P210, which by the testing, this wasn't exactly the P210 yet, but a P210 is it's a very well respected service sidearm. Now, the P210 being based on the 1935A, I think the 35A and the P210 here is the better target pistol, where the 1950, this might be the better overall general combat pistol. Now, having shot both of these, the 1950 with its push-button magazine release and its easier to operate slide release, you could definitely reload the 1950 much faster than the P210 with its heel magazine release. This is just a faster shooting pistol for sure, the 1950, and just based on reload speed, I think it's probably a better combat pistol. I think they're both going to be pretty similar in reliability. Trigger pulls, I mean, of course, the B210 is pretty close to perfection, but the 1950 is not bad at all. I think the trigger is pretty dang good on the 1950 for a combat or military sidearm. So if it was me personally having to pick which one of these to use as my sidearm, in the 1950s or 60s, I'd probably go with the 1950 over the P210, honestly. Even though I kind of said all the shortcomings there already are with this, the slide mounted safety and stuff. I'd probably ignore the safety as much as I could and just sort of reload using the slide release. It's kind of tricky, having to carry this. The French doctrine was, of course, to carry this in condition 3, loaded mag, empty chamber. That's sort of a problem, because at least with the P210 and other sidearms, you could load one and put the safety on. You can have it the old cocked and locked. But I think that's sort of more of a training issue, maybe with the 1950 or doctrinal issue. So of course comparison is relative, and comparing the 1950 to its contemporaries here, it doesn't really stand out. But comparing the 1950 to what it replaced in French service, this was a pretty stellar handgun in terms of what the French were using. Now, because so many 1950s in the United States are Vietnam bringbacks, you can kind of deduce that a lot of these 1950s were sent to French Indochina. They saw heavy combat in French Indochina and then also in Africa and a lot of the French conflicts in Africa. By all accounts, it seems that the 1950 was a well-liked and respected, battle pistol. Apparently, there's not too many horrible things written about this gun. Now, in my own experience, it does seem to be reliable. They seem to be really good shooters. 9-round capacity, single stack, of course, is a little dated. But for the time, this wasn't a really bad pistol. I mean, it might be a slight stretch to say that this was a sort of first-class battle pistol. But, I mean, the French soldier that was equipped with this gun was not under-equipped at all. For this time period, I wouldn't really hesitate to use one of these. This one design flaw out of the way, I think overall it's a pretty good gun. It's very reminiscent of, say, a 9mm 1911, or maybe like a single stack high power might be a better analogy for this. But overall, it's a good feeling, good shooting gun. It's a little heavy. It's all steel construction. The grip is a little long because in order to get that 9-round capacity, you have to have a really long magazine, which makes a really long grip. I can get 4 fingers just on this grip with a little room to spare. So the grip's a little too long. The gun overall is a little too long and heavy, maybe by modern standards. But I mean, as an openly carried battle pistol, it's not that terrible. For some reason, I really, really like these. I'm not sure why, but I just really, really enjoy these pistols overall. Just something about them. I think sort of single stack, all steel 9mm guns. They just feel a little bit different. They shoot a little bit better maybe than others. Now, so far, these pistols has only been imported twice. In fact, if I made this video a month ago, this would be completely different. But the first importation was listed in the June of 1961 American Rifle magazine, where these guns were imported from Indochina into the United States. So other than this first importation and the Vietnam bringbacks, that's pretty much all the 1950s in the United States. Until Navy Arms imported a bunch and Old West Scrounger started selling them. And that is what this one is here. I did an unboxing video of this one already if you haven't seen it. It used to be if you were looking to get a 1950, you're going to have to pay $2-3 grand for one. And now with this recent importation, there's actually some for sale. I don't know how long they'll be on the market. If you're watching this, months or years from now, they all might be sold. So, maybe they'll get more eventually, something like that. But this is just kind of one of those, neat instances of a gun being imported, like right when you're making a video. Because, usually making videos on old guns, these were imported a long time ago, and I'm making a video after the fact. But this is kind of surplus history sort of happening now with these being imported. So I do highly recommend picking one of these up if you can. They're great shooters, kind of pricey, but I think it's worth it, really. These are still kind of uncommon in the United States today. I think they're cool. I recommend getting one if you can afford it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've done quite a few videos now on the 1950, just kind of on accident. I just really like this pistol, and I just keep wanting to make videos about it. So I think this will be the last one on the 1950, at least for a while. So appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you next time.